Aye. Thank you. That brings us to proclamations, honors, awards, and resolutions of recognition. We begin with Council Resolution number 51, 2022.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster recognizing June 2022 as Immigrant Heritage Month and June 20th as World Refugee Day in the City of Lancaster, and noting the contributions of immigrants and refugees in creating the culture and economy of Lancaster.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I believe there's a representative from Church World Service here this evening.
Hello, good evening. My name is Valentina Ross. I'm the director at Church World Service in Lancaster. Hi, everybody. I would like to thank you, the councilman, the mayor, and the city of Lancaster for this proclamation in which you recognize and honor the contributions of refugees and immigrants to the city. We at Church World Service, we welcome and serve people from all over the world who have to flee their countries because of the conditions because it's dangerous to live there, because of war, conflict, persecution. And they look for better lives in peace and safety and dignity elsewhere. And here in the United States, we want to welcome them, not only because that's the right thing to do, but also because we know that our country gets stronger, better, more diverse, more rich because of that. And we would not be able to do our job as efficiently as we do it if it weren't for the support that we receive from the community and from a city that is asserting its welcoming spirit over and over again, not only through a proclamation, but through everyday actions, like through offering language access and language justice to its citizens, or through events such as the one where Councilman Lachar Calixte hosted yesterday, in which he welcomed the Haitian community and honored their tradition and their culture and encouraged their participation in civic engagement. So me personally, as an immigrant and a new American here in Lancaster, I am particularly proud of the fact that this city sees us immigrants, honors us, and values what we do to make this place better, not only for the immigrant community, but for all of us. So thank you again. I would like to remind you that this Friday, Church World Service is partnering again with the City of Lancaster and Music for Everyone to host a concert for refugees. It will be at Binns Park at 5:30 on Friday, and we will have on stage a Haitian band, La Musique. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council comments.
So I want to thank CWS for the work that they've been doing along the years for refugees and immigrants around the world, especially for immigrants and refugees here in Lancaster. Thank you.
Are there any other council comments? I would just say to any immigrants, refugees, and new Americans who have chosen Lancaster as the place that they want to be, we're proud and honored that you chose us. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Calexi.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waydell.
Aye. Thank you. It's customary, if you would like Councilor Calixte to present this copy of the resolution to CWS, maybe snap a photo.
Okay.
Here, turn so she can.
developing aspect, moving nations, refugees, and create culture and developing aspect. Thank you.
Counselor, I'm sorry, there's a second page. That takes us to Council Resolution number 52, 2022. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster recognizing June 2022 as Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer, Intersex, and Asexual Pride Month in the City of Lancaster, and encouraging all people to work to advance the cause of equality and towards achieving a safe community that appreciates its diversity in all its forms for generations to come.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. It's Pride Month, y'all, which is just exciting. And, every year we get the opportunity to recognize that through the raising, or I suppose it was an unfurling, as you put it, this year, of the flag, because we have construction out front, of course, this resolution. And as I know that many of you are excited, Lancaster Pride is back in the month of June, which just feels right and good and exciting. And I hope that folks will have an opportunity to otherwise participate and honor this month that is all about being who we are and demanding what it is that we deserve. Other council comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo,
Aye.
Mr. Colexi,
Aye.
Ms. Gregg,
Aye.
Ms. Diaz,
Aye.
Ms. Walsh,
Aye.
and President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Thank you very much. We go then to Administration Resolution number 53, 2022. Mr. Harris, if you would be so kind.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster recognizing June 19, 2022 as Juneteenth in the City of Lancaster and calling upon all Lancastrians to honor the dignity, culture, and contributions of African Americans to the history and life of the City of Lancaster.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Juneteenth is my favorite holiday, and I think objectively the best American holiday, but you don't have to hear it from me. We have some lovely folks here from Crispus Attucks Community Center and the Community Action Partnership who have a few words to say.
Thank you, Council and Mayor, for recognizing this important holiday and partnering with us on the continued work necessary to create true liberty and justice for all. Juneteenth should not only be a day of celebration, but for reflection and education. In many ways, Juneteenth represents how freedom and justice in the U.S. has always been delayed for Black people. There must be storytelling, education, and conversation. Juneteenth is American culture, but perceived to most as Black culture, and I'm going to assume that's why it's poorly understood outside the African American community. Juneteenth sheds light on the conversations we should be having and acknowledging the ways in which slavery generated massive amounts of wealth for white Americans and how the narratives used to justify slavery are still connected with narratives that are used to oppress African Americans today. This is too important not to be taught in our classrooms or discussed in our homes and our workplaces. While I'm grateful for the recognition, I am brought to the reality of the work that is ahead because freedom for others doesn't mean the same for folks who look like me. We are still seen and treated as subhuman and still must fight for equality and now what seems like a new freedom. We're resilient though. We have no other option because our lives literally depend on it. This is a step forward in slow march of progress, and I'm grateful that Crispus Attucks Community Center continues to live in its mission of helping to amplify the Black voice. We will celebrate because we get to uplift our community in a way that seems authentic to us, and we will continue those uncomfortable conversations because we understand the change we may require us to get folks, their minds and spirits in the right place. There is trauma and there needs to be accountability. That's all I have. Thanks.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. Are there any council comments on the resolution? Any comments from the public on the resolution? Good evening, Mr. Acosta Velez.
Yes, my name is Ivan Acosta Velez. I live at 804 Highland Avenue. I stand for support of this, but I also want to let you know that the territory of Puerto Rico ended slavery on March 23, 1873. So I was free at that time. Thanks.
Thank you, Ivan. Fantastic. Oh, yes, please.
Hi, Vanessa Filbert with Community Action Partnership. I just want to do a quick reminder that this is a jubilee, right? So we have the flag raising on Friday. Just want to remind the public of that. And at the community center at Crispus Attucks this Sunday at 6 p.m., we're hosting a cultural mixer, and we're inviting the community to that. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that we align, obviously, with Josh's comments, but we also wanted to make sure that there's lots of good things happening in the community this coming weekend, and just encouraging people to get out and celebrate.
Thank you very much.
And if I may, just to put a pin in it,
Yeah,
the
sure.
flag unfurling will be at 11 a.m. on Friday at Penn Square, and inviting everybody to join us for that moment. We'll be back out in front of City Hall very soon.
Also at noon, Imani Edutainers will be having their Juneteenth weekend celebration and performance on Sunday. Reverend Shell.
Yes, I just wanted to say I really want to thank you, President Radell, for this resolution acknowledging Juneteenth. But I also want to say to the young man, he should have had flyers to give out to everyone that's here, because a lot of them don't know anything about Juneteenth. But thank you so much.
Well, actually, thank you for bringing that up. So, in 1865, we did not have smartphones, and no one was around to tweet, "Hey, BT Dubs, slaves are free now." So, that's very glib and whatever. But the truth is that when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, it was limited to specific parts of the United States, and not just specific states, but only those counties that were in rebellion. And so there were counties that had pledged their fealty to the Union, in which there were slave-owning plantations where the Emancipation Proclamation did not go into effect. And the reality of the thing was, for many of the places where slaves were declared to be free, that was meaningless until the Union Army arrived. So General Granger arrives in Galveston, Texas. And this part of Galveston is an island, by the way, so not quite like the on the coast part of Galveston. But he arrives there on June 18th and makes this proclamation on June 19th. And this celebration sort of radiates out from Texas, where it was sort of a very local folk holiday, really only meaningful and celebrated in the African American communities in Texas. And then in the Deep South, the holiday comes north with the Great Migration. Large numbers of African Americans moved to the north, either fleeing Jim Crow or seeking new economic opportunities. And really in the past 10 years, Juneteenth has seen an explosion in popularity and celebration. It is now a national holiday. It is now a county holiday, unless we sort of think of it as just a holiday for and about Black people. The way that I see it is really sort of like a celebration of maturity for the United States. It is, as James Weldon Johnson, who you may know is the author of Lift Every Voice and Sing, also known as the African American National Anthem, referred to the emancipation of African slaves as the freedom of the Black man's body and the white man's soul. And so that it represented really something that was a soul unburdening, a freedom from sin for all members of the community.
And if I may say one thing, you may correct me, I believe it was President Biden who signed it and made it a federal holiday.
That's correct. Thank you, Reverend. Are there any other comments from council or the public? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo,
Aye.
Mr. Colexi,
Aye.
Ms. Craig,
Aye.
Ms. Diaz,
Aye.
Ms. Walsh,
Aye.
and President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Thank you. Do you guys want to? I didn't even have to ask, Brian. Okay, and now we go to Council Resolution Number 54, 2022. Mr. Harris, please.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster condemning recent instances of gun violence in our nation and the proliferation of assault-style weapons and the inaction of state and federal legislators to address this epidemic and protect our children and our communities.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. It was Councilor Diaz who brought this forward, so I'll let her address it.
Well, being the chair of public safety, I felt compelled that looking and listening to all the crimes and incidents across the nation, which has brought a lot of children that don't want to go to school because of fear, elderlies that don't want to go to their place of worship or go to grocery shopping. America is supposed to be safe wherever we go. And it's unfortunate that we have to fear and we have people that are living, I would say, with maybe PTSD because they feel emotionally and mentally scared to even leave their home. So that's why I felt that this resolution should be brought forward and continue advocating to stop the violence and to find ways to get legislators to bring resolutions and ordinances and law to stop the gun violence and achieve a goal so no one can live in fear.
Hear, hear, Councilor Diaz. Are there any other council comments? Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo,
Aye.
Mr. Colexi,
Aye.
Ms. Craig,
Aye.
Ms. Diaz,
Aye.
Ms. Walsh,
Aye.
and President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Thank you. That brings us to our first public comment period, reserved for those persons who have contacted Mr. Harris prior to the meeting to arrange to address council. Do we have any this evening, Mr. Harris?
Yes, we do, Mr. President. First is Nicola Mock.
Ms. Mock, are you here? Going once, going twice? Okay. We will move on. You said we have a second one, Mr. Harris?
Yes, Mr. President. Rhonda Harrison.
Ma'am?
Good evening. My name is Rhonda Harrison. I live just south of the city. I've been, worked, played, and I don't reside in Lancaster, but I've worked and played here for around 20 years. Our hearts were broken last fall. We lost our daughter, Ashley. That's her photo. After she was playing in a softball game with the Lancaster Rec League. She loved softball. She played since Little League. She loved basketball. She played that as well. They were very, scholar athletes throughout their Solanco career. I planned on speaking here no matter what the outcome was. It's been 9 months and a rough 9 months. I typically don't do anything like this. I'm an accountant. I do things pretty much, in teams or in an office by myself. Our beautiful daughter died at age 27. She would have been turning 28 on June 10th. And it just pains me to even think that she didn't make it. And one of the things that I really, outcomes that I hope is to, and I know you have a lot on your plate in Lancaster. I worked here, I know. But to add one more thing, I really just, one of the outcomes that I'd like to see is more safety, more additional guidelines around if a person's hit in the chest, which she was. She typically played outfield, center field. She was playing second base, and she was line drived in the chest. We tried different avenues. I started at the top. Of course, I went to Governor Wolf's office first. Tried various offices in the city to request, but I didn't do it properly. I should have known. I should have done the right to know request, but did not get the. She played in Conlin Park, that Conlin Field in Farnham, and she was found in her car, deceased after the game, after receiving a blow to the chest, playing second base. So we were expecting her home on September 28th. Instead, we received a visit from the coroner's office on the 29th. And it was just very heart-wrenching, but a resident at Water Street found her in the employee parking there and called an off-duty, I think he's a retired physician, and he pronounced her dead. They contacted the coroner. He confirmed her death, and they contacted the coroner's office. The painful thing for me is that there's no accountability. There has not been any accountability whatsoever. The teammates did come to the memorial service at Snyder. A beautiful write-ups on Snyder.com of my daughter. It cannot bring her to life, but we tried to bring her to life on that, through that obituary. She's the type of person that fed homeless, but would give the shirt off her back, she received many accolades as an employee at Lancaster General, and she worked for the third party, not billers, but I can't even think of it. But getting information for the customers, for patients, and they loved her. Her clients loved her. My hope is that this council can do more than the rules that are included in the guidelines from the Lancaster Rec League. It only addresses if there is blood on your uniform or if you're bleeding profusely. It does not address at all if you get a head injury or chest injury. What do you do in those emergency situations? The teammates said they checked her out. She said she was fine. That was it. But if I get hit in the chest, I would hope I either have chest protection or there's some protocols to help maybe get EMT, 911, somebody other than an adult softball player to look at me. So that's my hope. And I know, and I had this conversation with our lawyer, no money, nothing could ever bring our child back. There's no compensation in this world. But I know that God was watching. He saw what happened. And for me, that's enough to have, I know I'll see my daughter again. There's no doubt in my mind. But it's enough for me to know that he saw and the divine retribution will come later. I'm not a vindictive person, nor is my husband. We just want some accountability and a little bit of justice. It just is unfathomable that a 27-year-old does not make it home from a softball game. And she played with them for years. And I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I did go from the top at the state level. But I know grassroots is the way to go. It has to come through here. It has to go through our other representatives. I'm not a political person at all. I typically don't even stand for the pledge. It was just like an impulse thing. But I just, out of respect for you and your office that you hold, I really just hope it doesn't fall on deaf ears, and that something's done to protect our players, protect maybe even from Little League on up. Chest protection, something. Our son is in his mid-30s, and he said, Ma, Jaden, his oldest is 12, he said he doesn't, cups are optional. He does not get on the field if he doesn't have chest protection. So New Jersey is a little bit more ahead of Pennsylvania. We're lagging a little bit behind, but we need to get there, and we need to get there fast, because I would hate to see another mother or another father go through what we have gone through. Just the sheer fact that I'm standing here is a miracle in itself. Again, not a public speaker, but I just never want another parent to have to go through this. So thank you. And I'll be here until we figure this out together. We'll have more conversations. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Harrison. Do we have any other public comments, Mr. Harris?
We do not, Mr. President.
Okay. That brings us then to reports requested by council. Do we have any tonight, Mr. Harris?
We do not, Mr. President.
Thank you. We go then to reports of committees of council meetings held on June 6th. We begin with the Public Safety Committee. Councilor Diaz.
No, Public Safety Committee did not meet. Thank you.
Thank you. We go then to the Public Works Committee. Councilor Walsh.
The Public Works Committee did convene, and we have one item on the agenda, which we will get to later this evening, surrounding a grant application. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Next, we go to the Economic Development Committee. Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. The Economic Development Committee did meet during the last council committee meeting. I gave a brief update regarding the ARPA funds and the housing RFP. Just related the information to the public that to expect a finalized housing RFP or request for proposal by the end of this month that will be available to the public. That concludes my report, Council President.
Thank you. We go then to the Finance Committee, and Councilor Bakay is not with us this evening. I do not believe the Finance Committee met. Is that correct?
It did not, Mr. President.
Thank you. No, we go then to Community Planning. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. Community Planning did meet on June 6th. We had 3 items on the agenda. First being the review of the Historical Commission recommendation for Adamsbury Associates LP project at 213 College Avenue. The second was Administration Resolution 50, 2022, amending the sewer plan for the Washington Place Equity Project at 210 College Avenue. And we had a discussion of an easement agreement for the Hankin Group LGH project. And that was all that we met on.
Thank you. That brings us to the Personnel Committee. Councilor Calixte.
Thank you, Council President. The Personnel Committee met on June 6th and reviewed the nominations for appointment to the city's Land Bank Authority and with Development Authority and Investment District Authority. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilor Calixte. The Committee of the Whole also met Oh, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, I would like to make a motion.
Oh, I'm gonna let you make your motions when we get down to
Oh.
nominations for appointments.
All right,
Yep.
thank you.
Got you. Just want to note that the Committee of the Whole also met. We usually don't get a report on that, but the Committee of the Whole is just all of us in a committee meeting, and we discussed 3 items, 2 of which have already been addressed: the resolutions for Pride Month and Immigrant Heritage Month and World Refugee Day. And as we'll see on the legislative agenda, Council Bill number 12, 2022, which will amend the Human Relations, otherwise known as the Discrimination Ordinance, to prohibit discrimination based on natural hairstyles. We now go to our legislative agenda and to Councilor Kalik for nominations for appointment.
Thank you, Council President. Mr. President, I make a motion to appoint Dr. Karen Polite to the Lancaster City Land Bank Authority for a term from June 30th, 2022 to June 30th, 2026. And also, I would like to make a motion to appoint Hendrix Jackson to the City Redevelopment Authority for a term from June 30th, 2022 to June 30th, 2027. And Chris Delves for appointment to the Downtown Investment District Authority for a term from May 31st, 2022 until December 31st, 2027.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council comments on the appointments? From the public? Hearing none. Mr. Harris?
Mr. Arroyo,
Aye.
Mr. Gillespie,
Aye.
Ms. Craig,
Aye.
Ms. Diaz,
Aye.
Ms. Walsh,
Aye.
and President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Thank you very much, Councilor Kalik.
Thank you.
Okay, we go then to items from the Heritage Conservation District. Mr. Harris?
Yes, Mr. President, considering the following applications and recommendations from the Historical Commission for improvements to properties within the Heritage Conservation District. The first is Adams Berry Associates LP, owner of 213 College Avenue, and they propose demolition of a modern one-story office building to allow new construction on the site. And second is also Adams Berry Associates LP, owner of 213 to 217 College Avenue, proposed construction of a new 5-story multifamily residential building. And both of those applications were recommended for approval by the Historical Commission.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Just to clarify, Councilor Craig, the motion is for both items?
Correct.
Excellent. Okay, we have a motion and a second. I think we've heard a fair amount on this particular project, and of course, it's been covered in the paper. Before I open it up for councilor public comments, are there any staff or petitioner comments? Mr. Smith?
Good evening, councilors, mayor. Tonight, you have before you the recommendation for a certificate of appropriateness for 213. I thought it would be helpful to contextualize the project a bit in the broader development process and the sequence of decisions that ultimately add up to the final product of a development. It's complex and there are a lot of decisions involved. So I wanted to just walk through those and kind of take stock of where we are and also what still remains as part of the land development process. So first, zoning permissions are often dealt with at the very beginning because it sets basic design parameters and dimensions for the building, height, parking, etc. It's these key parameters that determine the feasibility of a project, including construction, funding, and otherwise. So this particular parcel was rezoned in 2020 to R4 to better reflect the Planning Commission and City Council's desire to see a residential use rather than an institutional one, which ceased with the closure of the hospital and the medical office at the site in question this evening. that really set the foundation for the development project and established the land use. Next was the Zoning Hearing Board. The Zoning Hearing Board is a quasi-judicial body that grants relief from the zoning ordinance. So the rezoning established the use, and then from there, the Zoning Hearing Board can provide relief of the regulations assigned to that particular land use. So relief was provided for this development, which granted the extension of the building and the multifamily use from the 213 College Ave site eastward towards Elm Street over several parcels. The Zoning Hearing Board granted that relief unanimously and further refined the foundation of the project's design, allowing the project designer to then begin looking at building footprint and floor plan and other major site elements. So you can see how these decisions all start to build on each other over time. At this point, the Planning Bureau always recommends that developers pursue Historical Commission recommendation and City Council approval for several key reasons. First and foremost, the Historical Commission makes recommendations to Council on building demolition. It makes sense to get approval for demolition prior to pursuing further design. Also, the Historical Commission reviews exterior building design and based on certain design standards, which can drive costs substantially. In this case, the Historical Commission made a unanimous recommendation to City Council to approve the project's proposed demolition and the new construction, based on it meeting those design standards in the ordinance. That does include size, scale, proportion relative to the streetscape and the surrounding buildings. And of course, the final vote for that is before you this evening. The project is still undergoing review and has several other key board and commission approvals left before the Planning Commission would make a final recommendation. The Traffic Commission will review the driveway design and placement or any changes to the public right-of-way for transportation, if deemed so under the ordinance. The Shade Tree Commission will review the species and placement of all street trees in the public right-of-way. And then finally, the Planning Commission is tasked with incorporating all of these various approvals into a final site plan and design. The Planning Commission provides the final vote on a site plan, which then allows the building permits to be released after review by building codes. So I thought it would be helpful to sort of make clear all the different purviews of the various boards and commissions, and also so you know what is left. In the land development review process, a team of a dozen or so employees at the city across planning, engineering, water, sewer, stormwater, zoning, urban forestry, and others all review the site plan. So the site planning process is focused on ensuring that the site functions safely for all users of the building and the site. That includes the public who interfaces with the streetscape and the property, and also first responders. The site plan is also ensures that the engineering of the site is done safely and in accordance with engineering standards. For instance, stormwater, utility design, curbs, pavement, all of the mundane stuff that us planners really get pretty nerdy about. So we rigorously review the engineering details and specifications, and in addition to hard infrastructure, we're also looking at things like landscaping, tree removal, planting, etc. All of that is to say that we take a holistic approach to every plan and work collaboratively through the review process with all of these staff. Sorry, give me one moment here. And so that I also want to add that, we have reviewed this with our expert city staff, and we have evaluated the building proposal as part of the land development process. And we have deemed that this project is design safe for fire, among many other topics. At the end of the process, after the Planning Commission votes, we hold financial guarantee from the developer to ensure that the plan we've approved is followed through with. So if the site is not designed properly or is not designed at all, for some reason, we have financial recourse to install those elements, those improvements to the land ourselves. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the development process. I know that's a lot, but I hope it's a helpful reminder of where we are and where we still need to go. Building Code Chief John LaFever and Fire Chief Hutchinson are both present to assist with any technical questions. And our project architect, HGC's project architect, Gary Weaver, is also present to answer questions.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Smith. What is the volume of the financial guarantee? That's just a curiosity on my part.
I don't recall whether we've established that number. So the financial guarantee is determined through an assessment by a professional engineer who estimates the costs that the city would incur to install all of the infrastructure necessary on site. That doesn't include the building, but it would include basically everything else on the site, grading, utilities, et cetera. In my time at the city, they have ranged from anywhere from $5,000 to $1.5 million. Yeah, I hope that is helpful.
It does. And then just a follow-up question, which is the Shade Tree Commission will review the installation of trees over or engaging with the public right-of-way. That's correct? Or
Yes, in the public right-of-way.
pardon me. And then trees that are, say, like on the site or not in the public right-of-way to be removed or installed, are those anyone's purview, or, and if so, whose?
Yes, several purviews there. So tree regulations stretch across 3, possibly 4 different ordinances. The zoning ordinance determines trees in parking lots and for landscaping requirements internal to the site. The subdivision and land development ordinance requires trees along the streetscape, deals mostly with the public right-of-way. But land development also is looking at the environmental impact of a site. So if large trees are cut down, then the land development process requires that they be replanted inch for inch in certain cases. That is administered by the Planning Bureau. And then there's also the trees ordinance, which gets into a lot more detail about how trees are cared for, how they're planted, and that also gets incorporated into the land development process. And there are a couple of other tree replacement requirements in that case as well. So planning and land development and in zoning work very closely with Public Works, who administers the tree ordinance, to ensure that we're coordinating all of these different regulations around trees.
Thank you. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to hear from Chief Hutchinson and your findings as far as safety goes with the new structure and the surrounding existing structures.
So we met with the architect along with John LaFever and discussed the construction type that they want to use in the construction of the building. The building that they proposed to build only required did not require any rated materials. They decided to go above and beyond, and they are going to use interior bearing walls of a non-rated, 1 hour rated, from non-rated to 1 hour rated. They're going to increase the floor and ceiling assemblies from non-rated to 1 hour rated, and this is all fire rated before failure, if a fire was to occur. They're going to increase the roof assemblies from a non-rated to a 1 hour rated, and they're increasing the protection of the primary structure frame from a non-rated to a 1 hour rated. They're also going to extend the sprinkler system to protect the parking areas of the building, which are separated from the remainder of the building by a 2 hour separation assembly, both horizontally and vertically. The building is going to be a fully sprinklered, fully alarmed structure and well maintained. A question was brought up about the aerial access. And under the code, when you have 2 entry and exit points on either side of the building, fully sprinklered, fully alarmed, the aerial access is not required under the International Building Code of the 2018. As for the surrounding structures, I'm not sure the question on that.
Well, it's not going to decrease the amount of accessibility that they already have in any way, shape, or form?
No, we deal with accessibility and we train for inaccessibility all the time with many structures in the city where it's limited access for our hoses, our ladders. A lot of the homes and a lot of the buildings only allow you a baker's alley where we're training for that type of incident.
Thank you.
Councilor Craig, if I may. Chief Hutchison, just for my part of my ignorance, but what does that mean from non-rated to 1 hour rated, and what impact does it have by making those changes?
So the construction material is rated for, it's all tested and it will not fail up to 1 hour, exposed to fire for up to 1 hour.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Craig. A few questions with regards to the code that you just cited by, forgive me for not remembering the acronym.
The International Building Code.
Yes. So even though it's not required, is it encouraged to increase or have some sort of access to? I mean, my biggest concern is for high volume residences. I mean, we've seen fires in high occupancy buildings in Philadelphia and New York that caused great damage, not only to the building itself, but also the surrounding areas. And I just worry that, with the focus on the building, that we're really not focusing on the residents that will be within the building as well as surrounding. So my question, I think, even though it's not required, is it something that should be encouraged?
It is encouraged, and with their modification to what they're proposing, they're going to build the building constructed a higher construction type that would normally be required under the building code. They're going to have the automatic fire suppression systems installed throughout, along with the city's response time, with a response time under 4 minutes to anywhere in the city. It's really going to decrease the chances of a conflagration happening in that building. And it just, again, it primarily dealt with the aerial access, which is our ladder trucks. But when you have a building that is sprinklered or alarmed, you're more or less, you're going to try to shelter in place until the fire can be suppressed.
Sure. And in regards to the alleyway access that will be decreased if this is approved and moved forward, is there any safety that is impaired for either residents of the new development or the existing residents through that by decreasing the access point between the buildings?
It really won't decrease the access. If I'm correct on this, John, it won't decrease. It's just it's more or less dealing with the aerial access. We'll still be able to get engines, which have our hoses and other types of fire apparatus to it.
Hi, my name is John LaFever. I'm the Bureau Chief of Building Code for the City of Lancaster. And basically, when we talk about the construction being upgraded, imagine the building that would normally require like a 2-hour rated exterior wall, but you could have wood framing throughout, no other ratings within. So the modification that Gary Weaver, the architect, came up with to basically come up with a safety standard that would equal or exceed providing an aerial access for the fire truck. So what they came up with was to build the building at a 3A construction, which means that you still have your 2-hour rated exterior wall, but you have your 1-hour rated horizontal assemblies, that's between the floor levels. You get your 1-hour rating on your bearing walls. You get your 1-hour rating at your ceiling for your roof structure, okay? And the building would not have had to have a sprinkler system in the open parking garage underneath. They're going to also put the sprinkler system and continue that through this building. Now, that being said, I also want to I think it should be very important to note that under the 2018 International Building Code, which is different than the fire code, it's the building codes are what are adopted under the state level, the Uniform Construction Code, which you have no choice. You have to, that's mandated, you have to enforce. That for a residential apartment complex that is fully sprinklered and has 2 interior exits, you no longer have to even provide windows that are escape and rescue compliant. In other words, in the old code in 2015, it was actually, you had to have a window that for all bedrooms that had to open up to 5.7 square feet. They've done away with that because of the sprinkler system and the protection that it provides for these buildings, that you don't even have to have a window other than for ventilation purposes. There is no rescue as far as what they're considering. The building is safe. So where we got in the issues with the fire aerial access being provided was out of the appendices in the fire code that were adopted. These were adopted, if you would say, that maybe would not have been so friendly for the city of Lancaster and our infrastructure that we had. And I know Chief Hutchinson is looking into getting those revisions done and maybe changing that down the line. So we had, but right now it's adopted, so we had to deal with this. So this method of the modification of making this building, one, constructed out of a more stringent construction type, giving a fully suppressed building, I'll take that any day, and I know Todd Hutch will too, any day of the week over providing aerial access. And they could actually build a building code compliant without even having windows open, which would mean why even provide aerial access to begin with? You have nothing even to rescue. You're not even providing a way. So when the building code deems this building is totally safe, they're going above and beyond the standard of construction for this building. It's a good, safe building. It really is. I wouldn't stand here and tell you if it wasn't. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you, for that. And I just want to ask it plainly because I think this becomes part of the concern as we've heard it expressed in public. Does the lack of an alley between the rear of the houses on Chestnut Street that the project would abut create a fire safety danger either for the residents of the building? And I want to I understand that of course we live in a place of codes and legal requirements, and I would like to step away from that briefly and just to say are we doing the best possible by people in achieving what I presume nobody disagrees with is an incredibly worthy and necessary goal, which is increasing the amount of affordable housing in the city of Lancaster, right? Basically non-negotiable. So what I want to know is, just, in plain English, does not having the alley there create additional fire risk for either the residents of the building or the residents of the homes on Chestnut Street that the project would abut, or on Elm Street for that matter?
Well, you're getting into the firefighting aspects of it, which I'll defer that to the chief. But I can tell you from the new building being constructed, because, again, it goes back to the suppression and how these buildings are constructed, that would be no. But as far as for the existing residents in the back, I'll defer that to him and for fighting that fire on the existing homes facing Chestnut.
Yeah, Chief?
So, like I said previously, we train for inaccessibility in a lot of the different sections of the city already. We all know the historical of the city is just, it was not built for accessibility of these large fire trucks. That we do make training plans that we come up with to simulate fires in inaccessible access areas.
Okay, and yes, and I have the utmost faith in the city's firefighters. It's not exactly the question I asked, which is, does it create an increased risk? If you said to me, your firefighters could, drop out of paradrop out of a helicopter, I'd believe you, and also I'd want to see that. But I think, really, the question I'm asking is, is there an increased risk, which is a slightly different answer, I think, than our firefighters are, the best in our little neck of Pennsylvania or maybe the world. But do you know what I'm saying? Yep.
In my professional opinion, I do not believe it increases the safety risk of any resident in that area.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Other council questions or comments? You you've got something there, Councilor Walsh.
Maybe one more, and I'm not really sure who to direct this to, but is there any way to adjust the design to keep the existing amount of distance between the property line and the new development.
Yep. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Gary Weaver with Tippett Weaver Architects. We're the architect for the project. I just want to be clear, there's currently no alley on this site between the property that we're working on or the neighbors. There is an area between the existing building and the fence line, which currently has mechanical units in it, and so there's no access through that alley currently. The line of the new building aligns on the same footprint as the existing building, and the line of the upper floors on the east portion aligns with where the parking deck is currently. And so there's nothing on this building that's closer to the property line, or there's nothing that will be closer to the property line than what's there right now. That's in reference to the south property line, which is the line that we're most close to.
So when you say there's not an alley, I mean, I walk back through there, there is definitely space between the footprint of the existing building, and I understand that will be demolished or changed in some way, and there's a fence line between, you know, the properties on
So
Chestnut.
what occurs right now is there's a tall one-story building that sits facing College Ave. That building is approximately 6 feet from the fence line, and in that area, there are 3 mechanical units that are in that 6-foot area. There's also fences around those mechanical units to provide sound separation around the mechanical units. And so there really is not any good access from College Ave to get eastward on the site. You could get from Elm Street from Elm, you could access the site on the south side and get from Elm to about where the one-story building is currently. There's really not access through the site in its current condition.
So currently, there's about 6 feet,
Yes,
and that 6 feet will remain.
at that portion of the building. And so what's happening is the new building aligns with the southernmost line of the existing building in the footprint of the existing building. As we extended that building to the east, we then set back the building to the setback line of 12 feet, which is what's required by the zoning ordinance.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry, Gary. Actually, this is not so much a question for you. So I think, hold on, while Mr. Weaver is up here, do we have any more questions for the architect from council?
I wanted to ask just a quick question. How accessible will the building be for people with disability?
The building will be designed to meet all the accessibility guidelines. We'll have a zero clearance access from College Avenue, and also at the rear of the building. We have accessible routes to all floors of the building. We have 12 units of the 64 that will be designated for people with disabilities and meeting all the requirements for a fully accessible building. And I think we have 7 parking spaces designated for people with disabilities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Did I have another? Okay, I'll work on formulating it and come back to it. What I'm sure you've all been waiting for. Are there any comments from the public?
Council President, if I may, before the public
Hold on
comment
just a second.
starts.
Councilor Arroyo, please.
This is probably just a general comment, but I'd just rather say it now before I forget. Probably some, for city staff as well as developers that come to us, I think it would be helpful for council if maybe images or pictures were provided, because I think when we talk about some of these either building developments or materials, whatever it might be, I think we take for granted sometimes that the public and sometimes council members ourselves have an understanding of what that is. So I think from a transparency sake, I think it would be helpful if we provide images, pictures of the area and the development that's in question, rather than just talk about it out loud. So I just wanted to make sure that I said that before I forgot. So that's all.
Yeah,
Council President.
that's right, Councilor Arroyo. And I think we've seen those before, and actually, as a matter of fact, I think we probably have that. Mr. Harris, are you capable of, taking the screen off for a second and pulling up a site plan or connecting it to Douglas, who is Johnny on the spot? Just so we, that's a compliment, by the way. While we're doing that, please.
Yes, hi, I'm Beth Bathe. I'm 655 West Chestnut Street, and I back up to the new building, and I'm smack in the middle of the block. So I want to address some of the questions that Ms. Walsh has. Currently, there is a parking deck back there, so my backyard looks out at the parking deck. It's open, fire trucks could come in, we've had utility trucks come in, so it's accessible. I really I'm very nervous what the fire marshal just said, where there's not going to be any aerial access. This building is taking up a whole city block. It goes from College Avenue almost all the way to Elm, 5 stories within 6 feet and 12 feet of my backyard. There will be no access. How will they, if there's a big fire, I don't have driveways. There's like 8 buildings. We're row houses. How is a fire truck, how are they going to put a fire out? I'm very, very worried. We've asked about an alleyway, we've asked about access, and it just goes to deaf ears. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Costaveles?
I live on the other side of the city. Here's my question. There's I'm going to be in 3 minutes. Number one, how much is it going to cost me as a city taxpayer to subsidize this project? How much are we giving them to build? If it's zero, good, but are they getting any tax, incentives? Because we keep on subsidizing large. Do you have a number?
This is an affordable housing project in which it is subsidized by federal home funds, state LIHTC tax credit dollars, and other sources. There are no general fund revenue dollars that are being allocated to this project from the city of Lancaster.
But will they be paying taxes like I do?
They will not be paying taxes because this is a nonprofit, mission-driven organization that is contributing to the betterment of our community by providing affordable housing. HDC owns a number of projects, housing projects throughout the city of Lancaster, as do many other organizations in the city of Lancaster that do not pay taxes. And I'd also just remind you that the hospital for many, many years was non-taxed as a charitable organization and did not contribute a payment in lieu of taxes either. And then when it was owned by UPMC, they, though that's a whole other story, but there you have it.
Okay. The reason I ask this question is because we have, and it's not to be argued here, but think about it. We say this is subsidized. I keep on hearing people that they don't qualify because they don't make enough money. The government is paying the full rent to those properties, okay? I mean, full rent, okay? And, they're getting a full rent. Some of these people, wait, what's going to be the price? $800 for an apartment? $1,000? There is some profit. Let me finish, okay? You say there's no profit, but there is. I've been in a lot of boards. So my question to you as council is, how is this going to do when people get told that they don't make enough money and they're in the street? That's number one. Second is, we hear these people that are paying taxes in Elm and Chestnut, and they're asking us, can you leave this? I mean, is that going to make the project so different? You know what I'm saying? They have to be good neighbors. You asked us to be good neighbors. So they think about it. Is it a foot or 2 foot to make it 6? Is that going to kill this project? That's the thing. And the other thing that I'm asking is, we always say, oh, it's nonprofit. But if it was nonprofit, the apartments would be free. And they're not. They get money from the government to pay full rent. And people don't understand that. I pay $200, the government pays $6. I pay $500, the government pays $5. It's full rent, Mayor, and you know this. And I want to ask you, what are they going to involve to that neighborhood when they come and make a big tururu-do-do-do. Whatever, it's a word, I don't want to say the other word, okay? What are we doing as council? And I'm not a council, but I get this all the time, and we tell people they're affordable, and I've talked to a couple of people that are homeless. We don't qualify because we don't make enough money. Please. We need to look at that, and that's what I'm asking. I'm not saying they don't do a good job, but please don't say they're not profit. They get profit, because they have to pay them, their manager and everything else.
Mr. Acosta-Velez, we don't, I mean, sure, but I want to be clear, actually, it's not us, but the Pennsylvania Bureau of Charitable Organizations that determines whether a building is exempt from property taxes. We don't make that choice up here. It's not made anywhere in this building. I just want to clarify that.
Fine, but what I'm trying to say, stop saying they're nonprofit. Look at Lancaster General, nonprofit. I got a bill from them. It don't look like no nonprofit to me, okay? And you know what I'm trying to say? I'm not trying to think about, we say we're building, and this lady wants space, and, she's been there, I'm not saying great, but she's been there a long time, okay? So, please, and that's all I'm asking.
Thank
As
you.
council, can you make it a little bit, and make it that an efficiency where you're taking off from the building?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Sabatini. I live on the 500 block of North Mary Street. I have some prepared comments, but two things I have to say in response to what was just said. First of all, about 3 weeks ago, there was a fire on my block of North Mary Street, a very narrow street that has no alley access in the back. Our yards butt up right against the people on Lancaster Avenue and on Pine. And the fire department was there within minutes. Everyone was safe. The buildings were, there's one building where the fire started where the folks have not been able to get back in. All the other people were fine. We did not have an alley to access it. The response was honestly amazing. You may have seen in the paper where a firefighter was hurt in that accident, and other fire departments from the county responded within moments when that happened. So I do want people to be safe, and also, we're already doing this all across the city, so I think it's kind of a non-issue, and to the chief's point that they're trained to deal with this. Additionally, I want to remind our community that we gave the Lancaster Marriott a very large tax break some years ago from property taxes, and they are most certainly not, or not, maybe not property taxes, but taxes, they are most certainly not a nonprofit organization, and the county commissioner is now trying to get some of that lost revenue from ARPA. That's another thing. And additionally, I work for a nonprofit. We do housing, we charge rent, and that rent purely goes to cover things like maintenance, upkeep, repairs, and staff salaries. People do have to have some level of income to live there. For my prepared comments, I wanted to say, I hear the concerns of our neighborhood. I have a unique perspective. As I've said, I work for a nonprofit here in Lancaster. I spend my days seeking funding to help house low-income families. The need is very great, and I believe that some of my neighbors' concerns are not big enough to deny this project. It is a total dismissal of the needs of the many for the wants of a few privileged individuals. Prior to this job, I was a teacher in SDOL. My students and their families were faced with many challenges due to economic inequities, and I had more than a few homeless and housing insecure students in my time there. This housing insecurity creates enormous problems for children and teens. They experience high levels of stress and anxiety, both of which make learning nearly impossible. I had many high school students who had to work to help provide for their families. They often came to school too tired to focus, and sometimes they simply didn't come to school at all. When I think about the impact secure housing could have had on their lives, I mourn for what they were unable to have, but I have hope for what our community can do to improve the lives of the children and families who will come after them. It is easy for us as a community to say we support more affordable housing. It is much more difficult to come up with solutions and then enact them. We must enact solutions, even if it means we have to adjust and change. I was recently at the Historic Commission meeting about a month ago where this matter was voted on, and the concerns I heard were elitist and racist comments about loud music, cigarettes being thrown out of windows, explanations of grand and beautiful houses where value would be destroyed by the affordable housing project. I was disappointed and outraged. According to the Lancaster County Homeless Coalition, Lancaster County will need 1,150 new affordable units each year to keep up with demand. In 2020, and while this was affected by the pandemic, but it's the most recent year, there were only 290 rental units under construction in the county. The city has said right on your website that they are committed to using all of the tools we have to create as many affordable housing units as possible, as we know housing is a key issue for the residents of our county. This project is an available tool, and I urge you all to vote in support. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Jay Rosenthal, 600 block of West Chestnut Street. I had some prepared remarks, but I really don't want to go from those remarks, other than to maybe address some of the points relative to the existing structure that's the 213 that kind of sits closer to the properties on the West Chestnut Street. So if you look at the property lines at the very bottom of the screen, and then that brown line across the distance, just the first portion of it, that is set back about 5.5, 6 feet from our property. When they demolished that building, they had to ask zoning for approval to go back in and get that same variance that was given back when that building was initially erected some years ago. So the normal distance or the setback should be 12 feet like it exists for the parking structure that's there. So our ask has always been to remove that zoning change and make it a 12-foot setback. So we have a little distance between our structures and that large building that's going to be erected. And whether a driveway, a fire need is required or not, I mean, I've been to a lot of these various development meetings recently, and I've always heard the need for fire access to surround the buildings that are being erected, brand new buildings. I'm not talking about existing buildings, but when there's an opportunity to get it right, that's our opportunity that we're letting go away by not putting in the access or the ability to build in something, whether it's today or in the future. But once this building gets erected, now it's going to sit there for, who knows, in perpetuity. So just the 12-foot variance or the distance was really what was always being asked. And like our neighbors here, the ones who spoke and have spoken about affordable housing, we are in support of affordable housing, never have been against affordable housing, but it was always represented to us as a project that was going to be 30 units, not 64. And then all of a sudden one day it was announced that it's not feasible for the developers to do a 30-unit structure, and it wasn't economically feasible. And those were the words that were used. And that they had to develop, double the size of the project. Affordable housing there is wonderful, actually, but it's almost a 6-foot now structure, 60 feet high structure from the existing 1-story to this now 5-story structure that's going to sit in our backyards in an area that's all residences that are 2 and 3 stories tall, that are historic in nature. Some homes are over 100 years old, such as mine, and we just our issue has been the size. And I know today was really about the Historic Commission approval of their vote, and so we've gotten a little bit off track. And I wasn't going to speak to anything other than to say that I thought that, quite frankly, when Historic Commission looks at things and look at streetscape, the entry point off of College Avenue and don't consider the entire envelope of the building and how it sits within the neighborhood is literally, in my opinion, irresponsible of the commission to allow for something to be passed, if you will, based on just the front street and not what it will look like all the way down for this long city block. So I gave the committee meeting last week some pictures, and I brought them again, just depicting what we enjoy today with the backyard of the parking deck or that 1-story building. And then Danielle Kipperling, who sits on the Historic Commission, she also spoke and used the clock tower buildings as a reference, and her reasoning for approving the project on the Historic Commission as the setback was limited. that setback is some 30 feet, and there's private driveways going to the backyards of these existing homes, these 5-row homes on West End Avenue that exist today. So there's a great distance, not 5.5 feet, but 30 feet distance from the garage. And then the third photo is just what the crossings look like, the apartment building that was built at the university, at F&M, that depict what a 5-story building and what it looks like when I'm standing back taking the photo 15 feet distance from the building. So I just ask that the council vote to not approve the project as it exists today, but rather look at some of these issues that we present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. While those are being passed out, are there other public comments on the approval or denial? Recommendation of approval is the language I should use. Mr. Smith, can you go back up to the image we were looking at the first time? So sorry. Just because it's blurry up here, what is this distance? Yeah, just right. Yeah, this is the 12 feet and this is the 6 feet, as it were?
Yes, that's right. That larger gap that you pointed to first is the 12-foot required setback by the zoning code, and that's where they're permitting to maintain that structure. And then I believe it's 5.5 feet. I'll have to zoom in there to the closer portion of that building, which is being demolished and reconstructed.
Okay, I have two more questions. Second, what's the surface here? What material is that?
So I can pull up some pictures if you'd like to see what that looks like, but generally it's grass. In that section that is narrower, as Mr. Weaver pointed out, there's some, I believe, air conditioning units and other sorts of building utilities that are in that area. It's not very traversable. But the other wider 12-foot area, there is grass that you can walk along. I'll pull up a picture here. Just give me a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Some of the context. So if we look up here, that's the roughly 6 foot between the fence line. This fence right here comes out to Milagro. This is the edge of the existing 1-story building. You can kind of see this is the space that exists there presently. This obviously is the building from College Ave. And then in this view here, that again is that space that we see between the existing 1-story and the fence that's there. And you can see there's some utility lines and poles and so forth that are along this property line as well. This fence line right here is the back of the fence of the Chestnut Street properties. I think if we go to the next sheet, perhaps. Yeah, so again, this is the area right here that's currently between the 1-story building that's coming down and the fences of the neighbors that are over here. You can see it's well overgrown. We have some pieces of equipment that are in that area way, and that all occurs right in this location.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. And yeah, so it's clear to me that there's not a lot happening in that 6-foot distance. This wooden, this like park fence here, this is...
So this corner right here is the corner of the existing parking deck.
Sure.
And so there's a distance here between the 1-story and the parking deck that's currently grass. And then this distance from this point right here to the fence line is 12 feet. And so
Okay.
this is the line that's being used for, so essentially where this building exists, we're building to that line.
Right.
And where this parking deck exists, we're building to that line. And just to be clear on the zoning issues that were discussed by Mr. Rosenthal, if this building, the zoning ordinance allows for a 6-foot setback in this district for up to 3 stories. Anything above 3 stories then requires more of a setback. And so that's really, this building was built and actually was built in conformance with zoning probably at the time it was constructed.
And then I think, I'm gonna drop my phone, that's fine. So, and I guess, my understanding what's being asked is, additional follow-up question. In this 12-foot span, as the plans are now, once the building is completed, what is happening in that 12-foot span?
Let me go to this. So you can shift that up. So this is the first floor plan of the building. Obviously, College Ave is over here. The existing one-story structure is pretty much right here. The parking deck takes this sort of odd configuration and comes around in here and then wraps around this building. And so the new building is being constructed to align with where it is currently, then it steps back and aligns with where the parking garage is here. This portion of the building is actually 5 stories. There's level change from College Ave to Elm Street of approximately 10 feet. And so this portion is 5 stories on College Ave. This portion is 4 stories, although the grade drops off as we go towards the back of the site. So the building does step down as we go back here. These areas right here will be landscaped, and there's a subsurface retention area here for stormwater. We have planting that's scheduled for in here. We originally had an access for parking back here, and we extended the parking into this area. There was a lot of opposition from neighbors in this neighborhood about having a second access point at this point. And so we revised the plans, went back to the existing access points, which are currently here. And back here at Elm Street, we got rid of the parking that was in here, and we've now designated this area to be stormwater and also sort of a landscaped garden space that's back here. The area along here between the two properties will be landscaped, probably in a ground cover or grass. We set up the front of this building to pretty much align with the front of the neighboring building here. And again, this area out in here is a landscaped area as well. We have a notch cut out in here, which was to get light into the center of the building and the upper floors, and also to get an outdoor recreational space in here for the residents. So it'd be a small sort of tot area in there.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver, in your professional opinion, it seems as it stands, it would be extremely challenging to get a right-of-way all the way from College to Elm. But I guess what I'm asking is there any potential for access, in here that would be meaningful in any way for either evacuation or fire? And what challenges does that present? So we're actually this is a fantastic opportunity to just remind council of this. we give final design say on projects like this to our planning commission, and we give final traffic say to our traffic commission, et cetera, et cetera. Unlike in some other municipalities where those bodies do not have final authority, they have final authority here. And while we are allowed broader consideration than the historical commission itself, the text of the law, and make of that what you will, is to evaluate the decision the historical commission has made based on the Secretary of Interior standards and other factors which we are able to consider and decide whether that recommendation of approval or denial was made in compliance therewith. And so I recognize we're right on the edge of that boundary, but bear with us anyway. We're kind of being asked to, at least by some of our neighbors, right, like to try to balance these two things. So I think what I'm asking is like, how much trouble indeed is it, and how much does the project lose, in your professional opinion, if there were some way to bring access, again, not all the way to College, but maybe like here-ish, the technical term, to Elm?
So what I would say in response to that is currently there's a whole series of fences along all of these back properties. Many of these properties down at this end of the block actually have driveways that come in from Chestnut Street. So it's really these properties primarily in the center here that do not have driveways to their backyard and have access issues.
Right.
I believe most or maybe all of those properties currently have gates that go out into what has been or had been UPMC's property. And so they are obviously accessing their backyards. Doesn't look like frequently, but perhaps occasionally to remove brush and that sort of thing. I don't think there's any plan to remove the fences or remove the gates. And so I think historically, they have used this access to get to the backs of their yards. And I don't know that anyone has said that that's being cut off. So I don't know that anything is changing from what's there currently.
So I think what I'm hearing, right, is from folks is that they might feel better, and evaluate that as you will, if there were some way for fire safety personnel, residents of Chestnut Street, characterize this as you will. Tell me if I'm being accurate or not. To come in here, and I think what I'm really considering is like what I'm trying to figure out for myself is like, is that a reasonable, feasible thing to have an alley here that a fire truck could use, and indeed, if that were possible, would that cut off some portion of the project? Yeah. And if so, how much? My apologies for speaking away from the microphone.
So in response to that, part of the issue that we were working through with the International Fire Code and the requirements for the aerial access is what that requires. It requires an access way that's 26 feet wide, and it needs to be parallel to the building, and it needs to not have any utilities above it. And it needs to be within 15 feet of the building. No, it needs to be more than 15 feet from the building and no more than 30 feet from the building, which the reality is that one issue, which was the issue we were working through with the fire department, occurs everywhere in the city. It's a condition that happens in many, many locations. We're actually working on 2 other projects right now in the city, and we have the very same issues where typically fire access comes from a public road. They want to get the fire truck in easily, have access, be able to get the truck out easily. I have to say, we've been doing these projects in the city for 30 plus years. We used to have regular meetings with the Fire Bureau to review projects early on, and I don't remember ever having the fire marshal, fire chief, say, I really want to have my piece of equipment stuck in the middle of the block between buildings. Never have we heard that response from the fire department. Usually, they want to be on the public streets, they want to be able to connect to a hydrant and then a pumper truck and then get hose into the middle of the site. And I'm not a fireman, but certainly, Chief Hutchinson could respond to that. I don't think they want a piece of equipment tucked in between the neighbor's fence and the parking garage.
I think I've asked you as many questions as is reasonable for me to ask. So thank you for bearing with me, Mr. Weaver, though, of course, I can't spare you from other council members. Are we?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you were going through the footprint of the plan, you had made mention, there is a requirement that if the property is greater than 3 stories, it requires a greater distance.
Yes.
Can you confirm the piece of that property with the 6-foot between, how many stories is that?
This is a 5-story structure here, and then back here, it's 4-story structure.
So being greater than 3, does that 6-foot meet the ordinance?
That was one of the issues that we went before the zoning hearing board to ask for relief from, and that was granted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you can safely sit now, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McGran.
I'll be super brief. My name is John McCrand. I live at 636 West Chestnut Street. And I just want to take a moment as a nearby neighbor, and while I recognize that the other neighbors who spoke earlier are, pretty directly very directly impacted by, the construction of this building, there are people in this neighborhood who are really excited about this project, and my wife and I are 2 of those people. The opportunity to, first of all, accommodate affordable housing is a great thing. When we sat in on the first presentation that HDC made when this project was just being developed as a concept, it was all online at that time. And throughout that conversation, both in spoken comments and in the chat, the comment that was made the most is how can we get as much affordable housing as possible into this project. So I think this fulfills that. And if this also unlocks the opportunity to also redevelop this currently abandoned hospital across the street and really, add a lot of life and great new neighbors to our neighborhood, that feels like a good thing too. So, we're excited to have this happen, be part of a small part of solving the great need for affordable housing in our city and inject, life into what's currently a pretty dead chunk of real estate in our neighborhood. So I hope you'll vote in favor of this tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. McGran. Going once? Going twice? Are there any other public comments? Members of council, one last at-bat. Councilor
I
Walsh.
have one more question for Chief Hutchinson. Mr. Weaver had said that you don't want a piece of your equipment stuck between those buildings, and I understand that you may not ever want that, but would that ever be necessary?
Thank you.
I can't say never, but in my experience, we don't put apparatus in between buildings like that. The collapse zone, the radiant heat from the fires, you get yourself stuck in that kind of position. It's not good.
Where would that leave I know that we're playing a hypothetical game here, and this is worst case scenario, right? So if you do have that big of a crisis, what would that mean potentially for the residents in the new development and the residents in existing properties if there were a crisis where there was a collapse, if there was an emergency where equipment would need to be there and then it couldn't be? And again, I know that we're playing a hypothetical game, but that's just where my mind goes with worst case scenario planning? Like, are we doing everything
I can
we
get all the equipment that I need, other than the physical fire truck, back in that area. Any hose, ladders, anything that might be needed for a rescue or suppression effort can all be brought back in that area. Although it'd be by hand, but it can still be there.
Thank you.
Chief, I'm sorry. Here we go again for the millionth time. Can the parking deck support fire apparatus? Like, could you drive a truck up onto the parking deck, or does access not?
You
Do you know what I'm
you
asking?
cannot drive the aerial apparatus up there.
Sure.
One of our newer engines, you can pull in off of College, but you cannot go back to you'd have to stop before you pass the building itself.
And just when you say aerial apparatus, that's a ladder truck?
That's the ladder truck.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, other than aerial apparatus being my new band name, Mr. Harris, would you please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Royo.
Aye.
Mr. Gillespie.
Aye.
Ms. Gregg.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Welsh.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna, if anybody wants to take this moment to step out, if that was the thing they're here for, they can do so, but, you're of course welcome to stay. Okay, we good? Great. Of course, thank you to city staff. All right, we go then to ordinances for first reading. Council Bill number 12, 2022.
Excuse me. Yes, Mr. President. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster amending Chapter 125 of the Code of the City of Lancaster, discrimination, to include difference in treatment based upon hairstyles and protective and cultural hair textures and hairstyles as a form of discrimination, and to prohibit same with respect to employment, housing, and educational opportunities, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect in accordance with Pennsylvania law.
Thank you. I'll hear a motion.
First reading, Mr.
Oh.
President.
It's been like 4 years, y'all, one day. Sorry. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. I don't have a lot to add to this other than the Crown Act, which stands for creating a respectful and open world for natural hair, was created in 2019 by Dove and the Crown Coalition in partnership with then State Senator Holly Mitchell of California. The purpose of this legislation seeks to amend the City of Lancaster's Human Relations Ordinance. The fact that we still have to talk about this completely blows my mind. I don't really have a whole lot to add to that other than this has been going on for decades. And I was doing some research this afternoon just to see how many people were affected directly. I read 43 articles where people lost jobs, couldn't get housing. An 11-year-old girl in Louisiana was sent home from school because she had braids in her hair, braid extensions in her hair. A young man in New Jersey in 2019 had to cut his hair he had dreadlocks, had to cut his hair at a wrestling match before he could continue to wrestle. They publicly humiliated this young man and cut his hair. His coach cut his hair in public. that's unheard of. But, I'm rambling, so that's all I have to add to that. Thank you, Council President.
Yeah, thank you. This is, in my opinion, straightforward and long overdue. Having a natural hairstyle, having braids or locks. I actually had a braid in disrepair when I sat down here at 6:30, and Councilor Craig, who of course owns James and Company's salon, just patched me up on the fly. So that was pretty great. But really, without comment on the fact that Boris Johnson is allowed to become Prime Minister of the UK with his hair looking like that, but black people can't wear braids to work. Really, truly, it is important. Our hair comes from somewhere; it means something very significant to the many people. Really, all members of the African diaspora, which of course includes black people and Latino folks who want to have braids or dreadlocks or cornrows or styles that not only represent where they come from, but help maintain the life of our hair. So when we come back to this in July, I would be really excited to see council pass it. I'll step off my soapbox. Thank you so much, Councilor Craig, for introducing this. Other council comments?
I do have one comment. And my comment would be, it's the hair that grows out of my head, really. What do you want me to do with it? That's it.
From the public?
I just want to take a quick opportunity to say how excited I am about amending the Human Relations Ordinance to prohibit discrimination, and excited I am to hear that along with the other conversations that were held earlier tonight, recognizing Immigrant Heritage Month, World Refugee Day, Pride, Juneteenth, these are all indicative of a city council and a city that affirms who we are as individuals and community members here in Lancaster. And so I'm excited to see this resolution as a part of the conversations that we're having about celebrating our uniqueness, our heritages, our histories, the challenges, the resilience. So just excited to see this conversation in context of all of the conversations we're having about how important it is to recognize and celebrate our diversity. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, just for the record.
Thank you. Oh, ma'am, I'm so sorry. We did not get your name or block of residence.
I'm Rachel Helwig, and I live in the 500 block of North Mary.
Are there other public comments? Okay. Fantastic. We will come back to that. Again, we have no second meeting in June, so we'll come back to that the first meeting in July, which brings us to resolutions. We begin with Administration Resolution number 49, 2022.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster authorizing the filing of the Commonwealth Financing Authority Act 13 application for funding in the amount of $225,000.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Walsh.
Sure. So this is administrative in nature. We do have Director Campbell with us this evening to answer any questions, but I would say this is pretty straightforward. The Public Works Department is planning to kick off an open space plan, which addresses the parks and recreation and open spaces within the city. This grant in the amount of $225,000 really pushes the budget to almost full fulfillment. But it would definitely get us closer to the full budgetary amount if we were awarded this, and what this does is allow the city to act as the applicant.
Director Campbell.
Thank you very much. I don't think that there's much more that I need to add to it, except I will say that being able to do this kind of work, parks and open space master planning, is often somewhat expensive to do. We have $75,000 that comes from DCNR already. This $225,000, as Councilmember Walsh says, would bring us virtually to full funding. There's not a guarantee that we would get it, but we're looking for is the permission to make the application and for the mayor and I to be the officiants to be able to receive that kind of funding. I also want to say in this kind of an effort for a public park, parks master planning, a huge percentage of that cost is for community and neighborhood outreach. And so we're basically, if we are successful with this funding, a $300 and some odd $1,000 effort can be acquired by the city for a pittance. And we have the ability to go out to the community, every community in the city, and ask what they need, how they need it, why they need it, where they need it, in ways that we haven't been able to do in the past. The last time we had a parks master plan was 2009, and this is the opportunity for us to look at our entire park system and recreation background in ways that we have not had the chance to look at it before.
Thank you, Director Campbell. Council comments? Comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Gillespie.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. Thank you. We go then to Administration Resolution Number 50, 2022. Mr. Harris?
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the adoption of an amendment to the Act 537 Official Sewage Facilities Plan for the City of Lancaster.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Craig?
Thank you, Council President. I really don't think I need to give you a description of the project because we've been talking about it for a large portion of this evening. But the sewage plan part of it, municipalities are required to develop and implement comprehensive official plans that address sewage disposal now and in the future. When a new land development project is proposed, municipalities are required to revise their official plan unless the project is exempt from planning. As of November 2019, the PA Department of Environmental Protection has been more restrictive about issuing exemptions to the city's challenges with combined sewer overflows into the Conestoga River. The modules are often submitted at early planning stages for development. Sewer modules are only disapproved under very specific conditions and upon a technical recommendation by the sewer engineer. Done.
Oh,
And here comes Douglas. I'm sure he's going to tell us more.
Hi, councilors. Chief Planner Douglas Smith. Just wanted to clarify that this sewer planning module is for the main hospital campus redevelopment, not related to the 213 College Ave. But what's listed here is 210 College Ave, used to be the address of the main hospital campus, which is actually now 250 College Ave. But it is related to the previous official sewage planning module for that property. So I just wanted to make you aware that we are talking about the redevelopment of the main hospital site and the proposed townhomes behind that site along Northwestern Avenue.
Mr. Smith, this is clerical in nature, but the piece of paper, right, like the legal fiction that is the piece of paper that would be generated by this vote or signed by this vote, does it say 210 or 250? Like, does it matter what's in the resolution? Is that going to create an error for us somewhere?
Can Mr. Harris confirm?
It says 210.
Is that going to create an issue for us at some time in the future? More importantly, can we amend the text of the resolution up here so as to, account for that and just, prevent any future trouble? No, that's like a weird.
Can I confirm one detail before we proceed? And
Yeah, of course.
I'm sorry that we're catching this in the moment here, but give me one moment here. Councilors, I'll fill you in on what we just discussed, and I have maybe a proposal. So what we were just discussing is whether the deed had been recorded for the subdivision of this property, which took a 0.75 acre portion of the overall hospital site and subdivided it for future development by HTC. That portion is what is to be known as 210 College Ave. The remainder of the site is to become 250 College Ave. At this moment, I have an unrecorded deed of that property, which means the entire parcel actually could still be 210, but it might be prudent, just to make sure that we're crossing our Ts and dotting our Is here, to maybe put off the vote of this particular item to make sure that we are indeed doing our due diligence here. Just to confirm, the sewage planning module and resolution does say 210 College Ave, which is the parcel as we currently know it, but let me double check the subdivision and I can get back to you at the next council meeting perhaps.
Yep.
Hello, Council. The other part that we've had this confusion with these addresses for a while now, which has caused some difficulty within our office as well. One of the things that I was suggesting to Mr. Smith is perhaps that we could address the sewer planning module for the site by tax parcel instead, but I think it may take us a little time to sort that out. I guess a potential amendment, Douglas, this is just for the WPE site, right? Not for the 0.75 acres. I would defer to council and the legislative mechanics here. There's probably a way that you could structure an amendment to be very clear about which property we're talking about. But I think specifically on the address, it would take us a little time to work that out because there's been some convoluted history here.
How much time, if I may interject? Like 15 minutes or like a day or two?
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, to be honest, as I was talking through this, I was realizing that there may have been some confusion in the writing of the resolution. This came directly from the developer maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. I suspected them and their land designer did their due diligence and submitted it properly, but certainly we want to be sure of that. The problem with the addresses has been an ongoing one since sort of the early stages of the redevelopment, because there were multiple address points actually assigned to the one parcel, and then questions over who was going to take one address and what was going to be shown in the deed.
So the options on the floor, as I understand them, are to table and bring to the next council meeting. And is there a time-bound requirement to this passage is there an immediacy to this sewer module? And if there is, then there may also be the opportunity to have another meeting or whatnot. I'm not sure. We can get to that, but is there something that's urgent?
I would want to double check the timelines because I don't know that offhand, but there is a timeline by which we have to review and recommend. So I can do that. I think the other possibility, and we would need to sort of work on the language here, is to approve this condition on it representing the larger portion of the hospital site. I can pull up a diagram and just clarify what that is, just so we're all in agreement of what we're approving, and it could be the parcel to be known as, 250 College Ave, as shown in the diagram that I could provide.
Bernie, what do you think?
I question whether or not we can simply do this at the meeting in a month. And if that does not derail the project, then it might just be easier to come back with a new plan description and a new resolution.
For what it's worth, that's my preference.
It's my understanding it wouldn't place any time constraints on the project at this time.
That's what we should do.
Okay, great. Move to table this item for further consideration at the July
14th.
12th.
At the July 12th meeting of council.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council comments on the motion to table. From the public?
And I'm sorry, that motion was from the president?
That was me.
Thank you.
Okay, hearing none, Mr. Harris?
Mr. Arroyo?
Aye.
Mr. Claxton?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Ms. Walsh?
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell?
Aye. Sorry for being a nerd about it.
Thank you, councilors, and my sincere apologies for the confusion. I'll stay up here for the next resolution.
Resolution's tabled.
Great. We go then to Administration Resolution Number 55, 2022. Mr. Harris?
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving an easement agreement between the City of Lancaster and Queen Street Development LP, granting an easement to QSD for encroachments into the public right-of-way over North Queen Street, West Frederick Street, and North Prince Street, as more fully set forth in the easement agreement.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. The Hankin Group and LGH Health have received conditional final plan approval for a mixed-use project at the site of the former YWCA, spanning about 3.5 acres between North Prince Street and North Queen Street. Along West Frederick Street, there are 240 residential units, 2 retail spaces, a restaurant, and a medical offices, and a parking garage. The developer is requesting the use of the city's public right-of-way for portions of the building that include footers that will be located under the sidewalk, upper floor balconies over the sidewalk, and minor architectural projections over the sidewalk. The plan has been revised by planning and public works for safety issues. Is there more to add to that, though?
I don't have anything more to add. Happy to answer any questions. And the developer, Neil Fisher from Hankin Group, is also here to answer any questions.
Councilors? From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo?
Aye.
Mr. Claxton?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Ms. Walsh?
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell?
Aye. Thank you very much. That brings us to our second public comment period. The rules are pretty much the same as the first one, except you do not have to have called beforehand, and it's generally oriented to items that are not on the agenda. Name, block of residence. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes in length. Mr. Acosta-Velez.
Okay, I have 3 things, and I'll keep them under a minute each. Number 1, I want to thank the fire department. I got sick at Snyder's. I was there at a funeral, and I think I was going to go. And thanks to the fire department, they came. I really appreciate it. Let them know. They were very nice to me. Number 2, the problem I've called you, and I've called, hasn't been resolved. I got my check. I resolved my issue, but my issue hasn't resolved. So I won't have to mention it. It has to do with the lead program. And I know a lot of people, so I don't want to talk bad about the lead program. So can you kind of see if you can resolve this for me, please?
Yeah, we'll get with the
Yeah, because
department.
I
This
don't
is the
wanna-
same one as sorry, just to be clear, this is the same.
The floor that's
yes.
falling apart, the paint job that they did, okay, the furniture that they messed up that belonged to my mom, okay? And the issue is that I don't want the same contractor because he was very racist to me. And I should have just said, leave, but I gave in and let him in my house. Okay. And I really, really appreciate it if, you can resolve that. And the other thing that I want to ask Mr. Hopkins, can you let us know what you are going to do with the money that we've taken to cover our deficit if we don't have a deficit that year, is that money ear to something else? I would like to know that, please. And you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
the American Rescue Plan dollars.
Yeah, I would like to know because, okay, you're putting it to cover deficit, but we're gonna do fine this summer. We're gonna do fine, and you have to be optimistic. What happens with that money we allocated for that? What are we gonna do with that money?
Actually, I don't know. There's a legal question I think that Patrick would have to answer. So you can, start making your way up here. But I would love to live in the world where we're not going to end this year with a deficit, but I don't think we live in that one. But assuming optimism, I don't think that any other than the reservoir funds and the $5 million that was set aside for housing projects have been specifically reserved by resolution of council, so it's not yet elsewhere dedicated if it doesn't go to revenue replacement. Humor me, Mr. Hopkins, if we designated $4.2 million for revenue replacement, and then in the following year, we, found ourselves with not a deficit but a surplus, is that something that, we would have to, consult the guidance on what we do next, or because revenue replacement is rear facing, would it not be a thing?
Testing my brain at the end of a long evening, but, so the requirement for the American Rescue Plan Act dollars is that we designate how those funds are being expended in our quarterly reporting. So, and American Rescue Plan Act dollars may not be used to put into what's referred to as a rainy day fund or fund balance. In effect, what we have to do is spend those dollars. The way that we have designated in our reporting to U.S. Treasury is that we're using those dollars to support the salary expenses of public safety personnel, police and fire personnel, because that is deemed a general government operation of the city, and that's what American Rescue Plan Act revenue replacement dollars are eligible to be used for. In the magical world where we don't have a deficit, and I really want to stress that this budget that we adopted this year has a use of reserves, not including $4.5 million coming to the city from the American Rescue Plan Act for the revenue replacement of about $2.5 million. The 2022 budget is a very challenging year, and going forward, they are ever more challenging. So, but in the case where we would have a surplus, we would still have designated those American Rescue Plan Act dollars for those police and fire salary expenses. What would fall to the bottom line for fund balance is all of the other general fund revenues that are coming into the city, but not the American Rescue Plan Act dollars.
So in plain English, what you're saying, we have to use it for that, but what do we do with the surplus? Can we use it for? See, we're going to have a surplus. Be positive.
I'm a very optimistic person, but I'm also a realistic person. Any fund balance can be designated either through the coming year's annual budget allocations, or as we've done in the past periodically with supplemental appropriations. So any fund balance that might remain, any surplus dollars that might remain after 1 year goes to fund balance. That fund balance can be allocated in the annual budget process or during the year through supplemental appropriation. Either way, they've got to go through approvals that City Council votes for with the majority vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Acosta-Velez.
You said you would answer my letter, right?
Yes. Yep. Going once, going twice? Good evening, Ms. Grievous.
Good evening. Here we go again. It's been 9 months. As many of you know, there was an injunction placed on my property. Injunctions, temporary injunctions, are typically 14 days. They expire in 14 days. Here we are 9 months later. On the 16th, it will be 9 months on an issue that was resolved and the condemnation should have been lifted. I'm nowhere closer now than I was when this thing began. It just, it's unimaginable that the city housing can just condemn a property for a roaded issue without any warning, without written notification, just impounds, just because a tenant moves out and does not leave the property clean, does not justify the city to come in and just condemn one's property. We're talking about affordable housing. This situation, 9 months, has displaced an entire family. So where is the affordable housing when the city has done exactly the opposite, had taken away a property that's been vacant and closed and locked for 9 months when there are desperate people looking for housing that displaced a family. And not only that property, my remaining properties, they were in the midst of basically displacing the remaining 39 of my residents by taking away my license. And it wasn't until, what was that, 4 months ago maybe? By bringing it to the attention of city council that all of a sudden I was permitted and the city accepted my payment, something that they've been denying me. So I was being set up by the city of Lancaster to basically destroy me and put me out of business. Is this what Lancaster City is about? I'm still trying to understand what crime I committed that allowed the city housing to lock me out of my property, a property that I own, that somehow I am not deserving of, and making it nearly impossible for me to gain access or get my property back. There are no answers. I mean, you're obviously hearing me, but the mouths are closed. There's no answers, and nothing seems to be done, but it's going to be, what, another 2 years until I give up? And
I don't have any new information from the last council meeting we were at. I don't know, Councilor Craig, Community Planning, if you have any new information from the last meeting we were at. I also don't know I have not received any new updates on the status of ongoing litigation, but, I will, direct, Rebecca, what's your title? Deputy Director, I do hope, and of course council expects, that you're doing your job, and that the inspectors are doing their job to the full faith and credit of the city, which of course is all that we can ask of you to do. That's what I've got for you, Ms. Grievous.
it's been 9 months. Like I said, when there's a temporary injunction placed on a property, it's temporary. It's not meant to be permanent. But the city has taken advantage of the situation and made it basically permanent to have me give up. That's not how the legal system works. The city cannot be making backdoor dirty deals without an order, which cannot be located, that allows the city to do what they're doing to me. If this can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. I've been a law-abiding citizen, worked hard for where I'm at, and here I am trying to teach my children how to respect, honor, work hard. And what does he see? He sees that could easily be stripped and taken away so easily. And I want to address this to the mayor. She was at the commencement speech, gave a commencement speech at McCaskey. where my son had just recently graduated, about if you have any questions, just ask. Well, I'm asking, he's asking. What are the answers? What example are we teaching our young people of how this system, the legal system and the local government works? There has to be some explanation and reasoning for this type of action that's happening.
Ms. Rivas, I can really only tell you two things. One, injunctions are ultimately levied and lifted by court officials. There are no court officials in this room. And secondly, if there is an order which you know was sent but cannot be identified or is for some reason not being produced by the city, I think that you know this, right? Like you need to submit a right to know request.
Oh, I've done that. I've done that from day one. But the problem is I get no answers just like I'm getting here. I've done that right to know request. And this is not done by the court. This is done by the city, lifting the condemnation that had been forced upon me for a problem that was already corrected back in October 1st of 2021.
Right, you mentioned an injunction.
An injunction. There was an injunction hearing. They had a temporary injunction that was forced upon me on September 21st.
Right.
That's good for 14 days. We had a hearing on that. But instead of having a hearing, I was denied due process, a dirty deal, some kind of deal was made without my consent. And before I know it, they didn't lift the condemnation that was supposed to be lifted. And here we are 9 months later, and just looking for inspections and re-inspections. They were supposed to inspect what was originally the reasoning for the condemnation, but that's not what happened. They came in when those issues were corrected, the minor cosmetic issues. They came up with a $50,000 list. $50,000 list on electrical, on plumbing, on heating, things that were not even the reasoning why my property was condemned. And you were in my property, Councilwoman Craig was in my property, and I'll allow anybody to come through my property. And in fact, on October 1st, at the hearing, the attorneys, the inspectors, everyone went through the property, and there was not, obviously, they checked it off. It was, what needed to be done was done. And when they saw that, then they moved to the next step in efforts to take away my property, just like they did my neighbor next door and how many other properties.
Okay, Ms. Grievous, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Jeremy Grievous. I'm the son of Miss Grievous. And I just graduated from J.P. McCaskey High School as an honor roll student. I've been an honor roll student the past 4 years that I've been at McCaskey High School. While in high school, I've been on the cross-country team and trad team and competed in regional and national championships representing Lancaster City Trad Club. I also run marathons and half marathons and actually won 2 half marathons. Additionally, I competed in the 48.6 mile Derby Challenge at Disney this year. I will be attending Millersville University next fall. I want to thank Mayor Sirachi for speaking at the commencement, and I was listening to you say, if I have a question, just ask. So Mayor Sirachi, I am asking why Lancaster City housing inspectors think it's fair to take advantage of people like my mother in effort to take away their property. I am the 3rd generation, and is this the future that I have to look forward to? Watching my mother dealing with the city for nearly a year, took away family time, vacation time, fun time, Hershey Park time, beach time, and of course lots of money that could have been used for myself and my family that went to the city instead. So do the words that you say have any meaning to them? Do they actually come from the heart? Or do you say those words to sound good? Is this what the next generation will look like? Miss Sirachi? And that's all I will have to say. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Grievous.
Yep. My pleasure.
Oh, and congratulations on graduating. Are there any other public comments? Ivan is right. Next election is in a year, so think about that. Anyway, we go then to the report of the mayor.
Thank you, Council President. As you know, the city's financial success is paramount in operating a sound government. This is why we are building our first team of development staff and centering it in the mayor's office to see holistically where funds can be utilized. In February, Tina Campbell, Community Fund Development Manager, joined the staff, and Jen Orantes started last month as the Fund Development Specialist. This is the first time that we have had 2 staff members devoted to this vital work. Chief of Staff Jess King and I both also contribute more time and effort to fund development in this new structure. The development team's central focus is to secure funding to support and elevate the work of the city government. The team's formation increases our capacity to secure new funding to support innovative solutions to complex problems that we face. Innovative use of grants funds has added 5 new positions in community outreach and social work in the past 2 years, and through the HUD Lead Hazard Control Grant, we've added 5 new positions. The city is also using $725,000 of the Community Development Block Grant dollars to fund positions that ensure that Lancaster has quality housing and properties. In addition to the $14 million in the HUD-led grant, Community Development Block Grant, and Emergency Solutions Grant managed by Community Planning and Economic Development, the city currently has approximately $27 million in supplemental awarded funding through active grants and sponsorships. Of the $27 million, about 95% is funding from state and federal sources, and 5% comes from private foundations and sponsorships. This consists of approximately 30 grantors and over 20 local corporate sponsorships. While the majority of the funds support the work and projects of public works, like that you passed earlier this evening for a grant to support DPW's park planning process, we also received $125,000 last week from the Binns family for Binns Park improvements. This funding is spread across all departments in the city, and the team is monitoring new funding starting to roll out from the bipartisan infrastructure law that will serve public works and many other projects on the city's priority list. And I just want to call out the bipartisan infrastructure law specifically, because the more that we are successful in securing funds through the federal government, the less burden will be on our ratepayers, specifically as it relates to our water and sewer funds, as well as our stormwater. The development team also assists our community partners in securing funding through administrative and guidance. This includes recent state funding applications for South and Concerned Neighbors, Tenfold, YWCA, and SACA. And we recently received awards from Keystone Grants and RCAP for the library's new building and renovations at the YWCA. So our team is working to support community partners as well as city government. Over the next year, the development team has plans to set up an efficient system of grant and fundraising management across all city departments, create a sponsorship and donor recognition process, and recommend a fundraising philosophy that will help the team to clearly identify priorities. I'm happy to say that they are really, really well on their way. And of course, these grants that we receive, the $27 million and so on, these are not general funds. These are dollars that are very specific to projects that we have applied for. But the idea is to displace specifically capital dollars that we'd be using out of our capital fund for projects around water infrastructure, transportation, sewer, stormwater, et cetera. And so that's why the majority of these funds really do flow through the Department of Public Works, because they carry the biggest burden in terms of deferred maintenance as well as capital construction projects. So their success, our new team's success, Tina and Jen's success, is our success, and I look forward to sharing with you accomplishments as the work continues. But just wanted to give you an update about this exciting work that's happening, again, in the mayor's office, and the work that we're doing together as a team to leverage as many dollars as we can to match and extend the hard-earned tax dollars that we receive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sirachi. Council comments? Okay, hearing none. I have no report other than that Pride is Saturday, 12 to 6, which I maybe mentioned earlier. Can't remember if I did. Either way, there it is. Please join us. What? At Clipper Stadium, that's right. And please join us for Juneteenth flag unfurling. It will again not be out front, but downtown at the Visitors Center. With that, I will hear a motion to adjourn. Yes, sir.
I would like to present, just what I didn't do, I apologize, but the order, and to back up that it's 14 days for the injunction.
These are the same document for all of us?
Yes, there's one for each.
Thank you, Ms. Grievous. Okay, I will then hear a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Have a good evening. Counselors, these are here as you might like them.
Thank you. I'll pass it on.
If anybody else. There you go.